Greetings, my name is Stephen Myers, and as the title suggests, this video is about comparing the construction of the Great Pyramid with the construction of the Hoover Dam in the United States of America. No, the Great Pyramid and the Hoover Dam were not constructed in the exact same manner. Also, the Hoover Dam and the Great Pyramid do not operate as machines in the exact same manner. Surely, there are huge differences between the Great Pyramid and the Hoover Dam in regards to both construction and purpose of those two massive public works projects. But there are some fascinating similarities. This video primarily focuses on just one fascinating similarity between the construction of the Great Pyramid and the construction of the Hoover Dam. The similarity between the construction of the Great Pyramid and the construction of the Hoover Dam discussed in this video is the important method of how workers were moved to where they were needed to be. In large construction projects, it is important to efficiently move workers where they needed to be during their time at work and to efficiently remove those workers from the construction site after their end of shift. This important task has to be accomplished before each work shift and after each work shift in a systematic and efficient and fast manner. The similarity between the construction site of the Hoover Dam and the construction of the Great Pyramid is that workers were moved in a similar manner. Recently, while studying large-scale public works projects and the construction methods used to create these large-scale public work projects, I came across this picture. The picture shows a movable platform that lowers workers down into the canyon and also lifts workers back up the canyon during the construction of the Hoover Dam. The movable platform in the picture is called a skiff. The skiff is 12 feet by 10 feet. It has a capacity to move 80 workers at a time. This specific platform, also known as a skiff, was used in the Nevada abutment during the construction of the massive Hoover Dam in the United States. The link for the source of this picture is in the description of this video. The picture was taken during the change of shift at the Hoover Dam construction site. Amazingly, this platform made the entire 565-foot trip in a time period of just over 1 minute. The distance this skiff moved was longer by over 100 feet than the height of the Great Pyramid. The fast movement of 80 workers at a time, both to and from their work site, was an important aspect of the Hoover Dam construction process. All major construction projects and factories and even armies endeavor to use a fast and efficient method to move personnel as possible. The use of this skiff was a very fast method to move 80 workers at a time. This movable platform, or skiff, moved workers up a distance of 655 feet in a little more than 1 minute. Also, this platform moved workers back down that same distance in a very short amount of time. The Great Pyramid and the Hoover Dam were built in the real world by real people, and both construction projects required and accomplished the efficient movement of workers. Imagine, if you will, being lifted up that skiff and watching the process of one of the largest construction projects ever attempted by our species as the mighty Hoover Dam construction project progressed day after day. What a sight to behold! The Great Pyramid was, when built, also a big construction project. This massive construction project in Egypt also required the use of a fast and efficient method to move workers onto the construction site and to their work areas, as well as an efficient and fast method to move workers from the construction site. But how were workers moved in an efficient manner in regards to the construction of the Great Pyramid? Did the workers walk up a big ramp that was greater in volume than the Great Pyramid itself? Building a big ramp that is larger in volume than the Great Pyramid is not an efficient method to move massive payloads or workers. The Empire State Building was a big construction project, and the builders of that project did not use a big ramp because a big ramp is not an efficient means to move heavy payloads or people. There are many detractors to the big ramp story who have legitimate objections to that unsubstantiated fairy tale. Did the workers walk up the internal spiral ramp that some have suggested, which supposedly exists inside the Great Pyramid? That unworkable idea of an internal spiral ramp is in crisis because the most recent scan of the Great Pyramid did not detect the theorized internal spiral ramp at all. The newest scan did not detect the internal spiral ramp because that theorized ramp actually does not exist and never has. Fake or made up ramps of whatever configuration are unworkable and are not how real workers in the real world were moved efficiently during the construction of the Great Pyramid. What fascinates me is that I just recently discovered this picture of the skiff, yet a few years ago I wrote a book and produced a documentary that describes the very similar process to move workers with a similar platform during the construction of the Great Pyramid. In my first book and first documentary, I contend that the Great Pyramid was built level by level, including casing stones. During construction of the Great Pyramid, a skiff or platform was used to lower workers down the side of the Great Pyramid quickly when those workers' shift was finished. The skiff or platform used in the construction of the Great Pyramid was eerily similar to the skiff used in the construction of the Hoover Dam. The platform with workers who have finished their work shift was lowered down the side of the Great Pyramid, transporting those workers in an efficient and quick manner. The following video clips are from my first documentary, which is about how the Great Pyramid was assembled using water locks and barges. I produced this documentary before I saw the picture of the skiff. The Great Pyramid was built level by level, including casing stones. There was a shallow pond at the level under construction. The large sun barges were on that pond and used to move the platform from the pond to the side of the Great Pyramid. The sun barges acted like floating cranes. After the platform was moved to the side of the Great Pyramid, the stairway was prepared and a rope was attached to the platform. At that point, the large floating crane was moved out of the way. The platform was held in place by the rope attached to it. The platform used to move workers down the side of the Great Pyramid was eerily similar to the skiff used to move workers during the construction of the Hoover Dam. After the floating crane was moved out of the way, workers who finished their work shift entered the platform that was secured by the rope. The skiff used during the construction of the Hoover Dam carried 80 workers. The number of workers the platform used in the construction of the Great Pyramid carried is under scholarly debate. The builders of the Great Pyramid used this efficient method to move workers from the level that was under construction down the side into the base of the Great Pyramid. The builders of the Great Pyramid were geniuses, and every aspect of the Great Pyramid construction project was accomplished in a fast, efficient manner. Then the platform was moved across the canal that encircled the Great Pyramid during construction. The workers left the platform, and then their work shift was over. If you are not familiar with my research, books, and documentaries about how and why the Great Pyramid was built, the short video clip will create a lot of questions in your mind. At least I hope it does. The answers to those questions, if you have any, are found in my books and documentaries, magazine articles, and many radio show interviews. But the focus of this video is comparing at least one aspect of the construction of the Great Pyramid with one aspect of the construction of the Hoover Dam. To me, anyway, it is fascinating that how my research indicates the workers who built the Great Pyramid were moved from their workstations after the end of their shift is so similar to how workers who built the Hoover Dam were actually moved from their workstations after the end of their shift. Again, I wrote the book and produced the documentary well before I ever saw the picture of the skiff. So, to me anyway, it is a fascinating aspect of moving workers from the construction site of the Great Pyramid being so similar to the movement of workers in the construction of the Hoover Dam. The skiff or platform moved 80 workers at a time, both up and down the abutment during the construction of the Hoover Dam. The short video clip from my first documentary showed how a similar platform was used to move workers down the side of the Great Pyramid. So the next question is, do I contend that somehow the workers who built the Great Pyramid pull that heavy platform, loaded with many workers, back up the side of the Great Pyramid? That would be a daunting task to somehow quickly pull a fully loaded platform up a steep 52-degree incline. Sounds like a lot of back-breaking work to me. I think instead of being strong-backed knuckle draggers, the builders who designed and built the Great Pyramid were geniuses who were extremely clever. They were too smart to somehow drag that heavy platform loaded with workers up the side of the Great Pyramid. So I think moving workers back up to the level where the construction process was taking place was different than what was used during the construction of the Hoover Dam. The skiff used at the Hoover Dam moved workers both up and down. In contrast, the skiff or platform used during the construction of the Great Pyramid only moved workers down the side of the Great Pyramid. So, how did workers go from the base of the Great Pyramid up to the level of the Great Pyramid being assembled? The Great Pyramid was built level by level, including casing stones. There are a number of methods proposed for workers to travel up to the level being constructed. I'm sure the viewer can imagine any number of different scenarios of how workers were moved up, which include rope, counterweights, or pulleys. Another option is the workers began their work shift by simply hitching a ride on the stone-laden barges as those barges moved up this series of water locks. So the movement of workers up to the level of the Great Pyramid, which was being built, was simple, easy, and systematic. Instead of workers being somehow pulled up the skiff or platform, workers simply hitched a ride up the water locks with the procession of stone-laden barges. This allowed workers to move up to the level of the Great Pyramid under construction. Every aspect of the construction of the Great Pyramid was systematic with production line efficiencies. The Great Pyramid was a masterpiece of engineering. No strong back muscles were required. What a fascinating commute this would be. The builders of the Great Pyramid were geniuses. So if the workers were only moved down the side of the Great Pyramid on the skiff or platform, how did that platform somehow get back up to where it was needed to lower the next shift of workers down the side of the Great Pyramid? Although I describe that process in my books and documentaries, I will address that question here again because it is related to the subject of this short video. The answer is easy. The builders, who were geniuses, simply moved the platform designed to float back up the water locks where it will be ready to again lower workers back down. That is pretty slick. I told you the workers were geniuses. So, the method used to move workers down the skiff during the construction of the Hoover Dam was very similar to the method of moving workers down the side of the Great Pyramid using the platform. These two methods were quite similar indeed. In contrast, moving workers back up was rather different during the construction of the Hoover Dam and the construction of the Great Pyramid. Since water locks were an integral aspect of the movement of construction workers back up the side of the Great Pyramid, I might as well talk about the water lock configuration just a little bit. Although there were no water locks used in the construction of the Hoover Dam, water locks have been suggested as an important aspect of the construction of the Great Pyramid, in that this video is comparing similarities and differences of the movement of workers during the construction process of the Great Pyramid and the Hoover Dam. We will talk just a little bit about the Great Pyramid water locks. The water locks were used to move the massive amount of materials and workers up to the level under construction as the Great Pyramid structure rose higher into the sky. I discussed the process of using water locks to assemble the Great Pyramid in detail in my first book, as well as depicting the water lock construction process with many computer-generated animations in my first documentary about the Great Pyramid. Links are in the description. The series of water locks were built into the side of the Great Pyramid. The series or flight of water locks were incorporated into the casing stones. Each water lock was built onto the sturdy top of the massive casing stones below each water lock. I described this configuration thoroughly in my first book and first documentary. This is a very simple and straightforward concept. The following video depicts very well how the water lock design was an integral part of the casing stones. The water locks were an integral part of the casing stones. These water locks were built into the wall of casing stones. The water locks had a flat base which rested securely on the top of the casing stones below each water lock. This configuration was extremely strong and robust. When the water locks were no longer needed, they were removed from the top down and the void where the water locks once were was filled in. At no time was the water locks somehow glued to the side of the smooth casing stones. Both my first book and first documentary clearly show the robust design of the water locks which were incorporated into the casing stone. The removal of the water lock reveals how the water lock was an integral part of the casing stones and not glued on the side of the casing stones like some detractors have falsely claimed. With the water lock removed, it is like a cutaway view showing how the flat base of each water lock was built on top of the flat top of the casing stones the water locks rested on. Yes, it is a very strong and robust design, and the water lock design did not require any water locks to be glued onto the side of the Great Pyramid. When the construction of the Great Pyramid was completed, the water locks were no longer needed. They were systematically removed from the top down, and the area where they once were was filled in. The video clearly shows the water locks were an integral part of the casing stones. The water locks had a flat bottom and sat firmly on the top of the casing stones just below each water lock. This provided a very strong place for each water lock. The water locks were not glued to the side of the smooth casing stones. If you can understand the integral design of the water locks into the casing stones, your understanding is greater and much more accurate than those who falsely claim the water locks were somehow glued onto the side of the Great Pyramid. I make this point because there are some who are detractors of my research because they, for some reason, think that I somehow contend the water locks were in some way glued to the smooth sloping side of the Great Pyramid casing stones. That notion of the water locks just hanging on the side of the Great Pyramid is unworkable, and they reject my research because of that impossibility. That is why it is not part of my research. But there are those who misunderstand or misrepresent this simple aspect of my research by contending that I say the water locks were just hanging on the side of the casing stones. The people who make that claim are either poor researchers who cannot even understand how I contend the water locks were built, or they are intentionally disingenuous and are trying to discredit me with deliberate lies. It is one thing to question an aspect of my research, but it is another thing entirely to misrepresent my research for some nefarious purpose. On the bright side, this provides an opportunity for you, the viewer. If you ever encounter a researcher who rejects or discredits my research because the water locks can't hang on the side of the casing stones, it tells you something important about any researcher who makes that claim. That researcher is either unable to conduct research well enough to understand I never said or wrote the water locks hung on the side of the casing stones. If that researcher can't even figure out that simple aspect of my research, it means there is a lot they misunderstand, and that person is a poor researcher. The other possibility is the researcher is disingenuous and is a nefarious liar when they misrepresent my research. Either way, it is a good litmus test for you, the viewer. When or if you encounter a researcher who rejects my research because the water locks can't be glued to the side of the casing stones, it means you have encountered a poor researcher or a liar. My advice to you, the viewer, is those are the type of people to steer clear from on your research for truth. So, there is a fascinating similarity between the construction procedure used in both the Great Pyramid and the Hoover Dam. A skiff or platform was used to move workers both up and down as part of their daily work experience in the Hoover Dam. There was also a similar type or skiff or platform used to move workers down the side of the Great Pyramid during construction. Also, there is a contrast in the construction methods in that the skiff used during the construction of the Hoover Dam moved workers both down and back up, but the platform used in the construction of the Great Pyramid was used to move workers only down the side of the Great Pyramid. Moving workers back up to where they needed to go was quite different in these two construction projects. The Great Pyramid construction project utilized a series of water locks that were built into the casing stones. These water locks, with flat bottoms, resting on top of the casing stones below the water lock. These water locks were incorporated into the wall of casing stones and were not hanging on the side as some have misrepresented. This series, or flight of water locks, moved both the massive stones and the workers up to the needed heights. These water locks also moved the floating platform back up to the level under construction to be reused at the next end of shift. The builders were truly geniuses. So I hope you find the fascinating similarity between one aspect of how the Hoover Dam was built with an aspect of how the Great Pyramid was built as interesting as I have. In no way is this short video an exhaustive explanation of how either the Hoover Dam or the Great Pyramid was assembled. If you have more questions, you can certainly find out more about this direction of research on how and why the Great Pyramid was assembled. Links to my books and documentaries and other information can be found in the description of this video. You can reach me through my website at www.thepump.org if you have any questions. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. There is lots of information in my YouTube videos, and there are many upcoming videos in the works. I do many radio interviews, and if you need a guest to interview, contact me by email or through my Facebook page. Thank you for watching, and I wish you the best in your journey as a truth seeker.